Thank you, sir, for your invitation, and I thank Dr. Mahapatra as well as Dr. Khanna for giving me this opportunity. Now I invited my close friend John Christopher to discuss on coronary calcium scoring, how it is advantage or how it evaluates the coronary artery disease. Sir, Dr. Christopher, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, respected chairpersons, Dr. Khanna and Dr. Mahapatra. Are my slides visible?
Yeah.
Okay, sir. So I'll be talking about coronary calcium scoring. We know that the prognosis in coronary artery disease long ago was dependent on whether you had a single vessel disease or a double vessel disease, or if you had a heart failure or not. Soon, the prognosis was dependent on whether you had an LAD disease or a non-LAD disease. So thankfully, we have come far, and then we moved into the clinical subsets of patients who had heart failure, and those patients who had a high blood pressure, and those were the patients who had a poor survival curve. But we have moved on, and we have come to more clinically relevant tools, and one of the most important and widely used is the Framingham Risk Score, which looks at a number of clinical parameters to judge the patient's risk of developing heart disease over a 10-year period. And it was in 2009 by Dr. Philip Greenland's group in the Northwestern University and his little editorial in the Time magazine, which just exploded calcium coronary scoring into the mainstream cardiac practice. The MESA trial also, for the first time in their clinical scoring, added an Agatston score in their scoreboard. And what it showed in this patient was that with only the clinical parameters, the score was 4.7, which is low risk. But with the addition of 175, which was the patient's calcium score, the risk just boomeranged to 7.6%, which is an intermediate risk. And therefore, the prognosis completely changed. What is calcium scoring? Coronary calcium score is a part of the development of atherosclerosis. It is found exclusively in atherosclerotic arteries in the heart. It's obviously seen more in advanced lesions and in elderly age. However, we don't have a linear relationship between calcium score, percentage stenosis, and vulnerable plaques. In the 1980s, calcium scoring was done by the EBCT machines. The three scores that were common were the Agatston's, volume, and calcium. We moved on in the early part of the millennium when the GE company actually took over and bought out the EBCT and stopped its production. And therefore, only multi-slice CT scanners have been used ever since with an excellent temporal and very good spatial resolution. What is very good with the top-end scanners is that you can see in this patient with a BMI of about 24, the dose is about 0.4 millisieverts, and a slightly heavier patient with a BMI of 30, the expected dose goes up to about 0.7 or 0.8, well within the 1 millisievert margin. The scan is done by using a what we call a helical mode in the CT. It's a non-contrast scan. You don't need to use contrast. It is an ECG gated scan, and the scan happens in about 5 seconds. The total procedure is about 5 minutes. So patients walk in and walk out with absolutely no preparation. Now, we've talked about the various scores, the Agatston, volume, and the density. There is some small body of data which suggests that the density factor is also important. And with the same Agatston and volume score, a lower density seems to give a higher cardiovascular risk to that patient, but it is not very well known, nor is it done widely. Now, how are we interpreting calcium score? A 0 score means you have no identified plaque. The risk of heart disease and heart attack is extremely low. Anything less than 10 is a minimally identified plaque with, again, a low risk of heart disease and MI. When you touch 100, it's called as mild, and there is a moderate risk of heart disease. And when you cross 400, it is a moderate to high or high risk. And in our series at our institution, we found that when you cross 400, 50% of our patients had a positive stress maybe scan on the nuclear imaging. Now, this is a 45-year-old gentleman. He's a businessman who had atypical chest pain. We did his calcium score 0. We did the CT immediately afterwards, and pristine coronary arteries, LAD, L6, and RCA. We gave him a clean bill of health, and actually stopped the aspirin for him and made sure that his lifestyle factors were well controlled. This is another 65-year-old lady with atypical chest pain, and her calcium score was 1609. And no surprises when we did the CT, multiple lesions in all the three territories of intermediate to high region. And this lady actually required an angiogram and a subsequent bypass surgery. Now, who are we going to use the calcium score? It is reasonable with a level of evidence B by the American College in a patient with an intermediate risk, 10 to 20% 10-year risk score, or may be reasonable for someone with a low to intermediate risk, 6 to 10% score. Definitely not recommended for a patient of less than 6% intermediate score. And the way we go about it is this very nice flow chart, which was published in the Journal of Nuclear Medicine, where if the 10-year risk is low, then primary prevention is what is offered. If the patient has a high risk on the clinical parameters of more than 20%, he straight gets a nuclear scan, a SPECT scan. If there's extensive ischemia, he gets to go directly to the cath lab. If it is mild to moderate, he's on medical management for secondary prevention. And if this patient has an intermediate score, and that's the kind of score and patient we're looking at, he gets a calcium score. And if it is between 100 and 400, he gets secondary prevention. Less than 100, he gets primary prevention. And more than 400, he gets a stress scan. And this is the general way we would be using the calcium score in this kind of population. And where does our recommendations come from? It started from the 2006 American Heart Association on the assessment of coronary heart disease, the 2007 American College Guideline, and the combined American College and Heart Association in 2010 gave us some very, very robust evidence in favor of calcium scores. So the 2007 guideline, the 2013 guideline, and here the recommendation clearly showed that when a clinical risk model is uncertain, then you could either use a family history, a HSCRP, a calcium score, or an ABI. And so therefore, calcium score has a fairly good recommendation of 2B with the level of evidence B, and that's the data that we are working at. Now, what is the difference between calcium scoring and CIMT? Now, calcium scoring has a high predictability in patients with cardiovascular disease or coronary disease. The predictability is low in patients with CVA, while a CIMT has a lower predictability in coronary disease, but a higher predictability in stroke patients. This is just to set matters right for which is better for which. Now, sensitivity is high for calcium score in the presence of 50% angiographic stenosis, but the specificity is only moderate, and the sensitivity ranges between 90 to 92% with only a 50% specificity. However, we must see that the absence of calcium is highly predictive of the absence of significant coronary artery disease. There are obviously patients who cannot have it, and those patients are those who are pregnant, patients who have already had an MI, angioplasty, bypass surgery, whose resting heart rates are very high, and those who have intracardiac pacemakers, wires, or stents or valves, which will obscure the calcium scoring. Now, the accuracy trial clearly showed a very high sensitivity of calcium scoring, especially if it was 0, but it also displayed the lower specificity of the calcium score. Looking at the ethnicity, it is seen that the whites have the highest calcium scores, both male and female, compared to the Chinese, Hispanic, and Black, but the predictive value of calcium score still remains the same. Now, when you talk about the relative risk for coronary disease in the elderly, it is seen that the tertile of calcium scores from starting from 0 to more than 1,000 has a significant bearing on the cardiovascular risk prediction of these patients. Within the same FRS score of 10 to 20%, we can divide our patients into 3 tertiles based on the calcium score, with very low disease of annual coronary events in the first tertile less than 100, and very high incidence of coronary MACE in patients with more than 400 score. And also the NEGM study clearly showed that if you have a high score of more than 300, you have a significant coronary event of almost 10% plus over a 5-year period. And also we have seen the data that in elderly patients, especially when you cross 55, the chance of you having a significant lesion if you are male is high if you have a higher calcium, and also if you're female with a higher calcium score compared to those patients who who have lower calcium score have a lower incidence of significant lesions. What is the effect of using calcium score? Well, it has a possible therapy for primary prevention and helps us to add aspirin and hike up the dose of statin in those patients who have a higher calcium score compared to their clinical risk score. We have looked at statins and other therapies, and it is actually found paradoxically that the use of statins increases calcium scores over a period of time. And just a week ago, I saw an article which says in a Korean database that patients who did excessive exercise actually had a faster calcium progression. Not sure what that means. So calcium progression has been conflicting, and we are really not sure what it really means. But in terms of prognosis, if you're asymptomatic and have a calcium score of 0, you have an excellent prognosis compared to somebody who has a calcium score of more than 0. It's not very true for symptomatic patients. The same doesn't hold true, and symptomatic patients don't get the same kind of benefit. Again, it's clearly noted that in patients with a lower FRS score, the calcium scores are generally less than 400 compared to patients with higher FRS score, where this calcium scores of more than 400 are more common. And again, if you're looking at 5-year mortality and we're looking at the FRS division, you can see in patients with low calcium scores, the FRS scores by themselves do not really tell us about the prognosis compared to patients with a higher calcium score than the FRS score is able to divide the 3 tertiles. Now, what is very important is that in smokers, be aware that a lot of patients have a calcium score of less than 10 and they're still vulnerable to myocardial ischemia. The same thing has been noted in the emergency room, where we find that even with a calcium score of 0, there is significant atherosclerosis and stenosis, possibly due to the presence of significant non-calcified lipid-rich plaques. When we look at the endothelial physiology, also we can see in those patients with ischemia, they have higher calcium scores, both more than 100 and more than 400, compared to those with no ischemia, who have a higher proportion of patients with calcium score more than 0. In this very interesting article, it was shown that if you add the peripheral artery disease detection, calcium scoring, and nephropathy, you can actually uptitrate the risk of diabetes mellitus in these patients. When you talk about the warranty of calcium scores, it is as high as 15% for those with a calcium score of 0. However, diabetics, the warranty drops down to less than 5 years, showing that if you're a diabetic, a calcium score of 0 may not protect you. Repeat calcium score at this time is not recommended. There's no clinical algorithm to look at repeated calciums, although people say after 3 years you can have a look at it. But also we must remember that statins actually increase the calcium score. What it really does is the presence of calcium helps the compliance to various drugs in patients. Once they know they have a higher calcium score, their compliance seems to improve. And the big trial, which was done fairly recently, the Eisner trial, which was headed by Dr. Dan Berman, looked at coronary artery calcium score in the Sinai Institute.
Kindly conclude your slides, please.
Yes, that patients who had a normal calcium score had fewer tests and procedures in the subsequent 4 years, although the drug costs went up because they were aggressively managed. Now we have AI and machine learning coming, and even in the non-gated scans, we're able to pick up the calcium scores, and we are going to get some very good models in the years to come. I will end my talk with this very, very interesting statement by Dr. Dan Berman, who's also my mentor. And what he said was the recommendation by major professional organizations in cardiology that coronary calcium be measured is likely to have as great an impact on saving lives as a recommendation that cholesterol be measured and controlled. Very, very interesting science. And thank you very much for that opportunity. And thank you very much once again. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the nice presentation.